Some people think it is a cool cyberpunk outlook into the future. Some people think that it's gone too far from its roots and too far from where the Charger started. Let's figure out where the Charger stands and if it's a great car or not. The Dodge Charger, one of the coolest cars of all time, one of the most iconic cars of all time. Before we talk about 2025, 2026, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the history of Dodge Charger and why it has made such a big impact, and really why it's had such a long history of fans and why it's been such an iconic car over such a long period of time. Now, to start off with the history of Dodge Charger, you first got to go all the way back to the mid-1960s, specifically 1965, when the first Dodge Charger ever came out. Now, this was kind of in line with cars that were starting to become the golden era of muscle cars, basically putting those big V8 truck engines in smaller cars to make performance muscle cars. The 2025-2026 model year trying to bring some of the old styling back from that Dodge Daytona name. You can see it in the styling as well. The first Dodge Daytona was actually the Dodge Daytona 500, and that was in 1969. It was developed specifically for NASCAR, and it was specifically designed for the highest performance that you could get in a vehicle of that size. Now, of course, they have, specifically in this category, had the Dodge Charger and the Dodge Challenger as their muscle car, sport car, enthusiast type vehicles. Obviously, since that 1960s period up until now, they've had different variations with different body styles. But in 2025 is when they introduced the Dodge Charger Daytona EV, and that was when the first sale of the first EV Dodge Charger took place. Immediately, some of the big things, some of the big changes that you notice are, of course, its size. It is actually a very large vehicle, especially with the battery packs. It has almost an SUV base to it, and it's basically just a Charger Challenger wrap. One of the big things was the Dodge logo changing from the Dodge logo to that Frat Dog logo, and it being illuminated, kind of having that light bar, kind of futuristic cyberpunk look to it. But they did try to introduce some elements, especially with the body lines and the way that it looks, to compare it to that 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona and kind of keep some of the elements and some of the history and being like, hey, we remember our roots, we remember where we came from. This is just a new age of something that purists love. Now, speaking again in the trims of the Dodge Charger Daytona EV, you have the RT that has a 496 horsepower launch control kind of option. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. If you jump up to the Scat Pack, it offers the 670 horsepower with that power shot as well, 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. Now, both trims offer the 100.5 kilowatt per hour battery pack and a multi-speed transmission. This is obviously gonna affect your range. The interior is really keeping in line with that futuristic look. They really committed to bringing something that was going to be futuristic, and I like using the word cyberpunk because every time I see this vehicle, it seems straight out of like a retro wave cyberpunk type movie. I gotta say, if you can get past the fact that it has come so far from its origin, you can really start to appreciate the beauty and the styling and how aggressive it looks in a different way, especially since they decided to get rid of their Challenger out of their lineup and go just Charger. It's pretty much inevitable that you're going to have people that want to compare it with the old version. Of course, if you're trying to get the new version, you want to see if it's going to compare or be better in some ways than the old version. One of the big comparisons to start out with, of course, is going to be price. When you're looking at this Dodge Charger Daytona EV 2025-2026, you're looking at a price tag of $60 bare bones up to $80,000 and more if you want to add options and performance. And most people, of course, would want to do that with a car enthusiast type vehicle. The problem becomes, for that type of money, is this a car that is appealing enough to the demographic that it's trying to appeal to, that it makes sense for the price? The second comparison and the second difference that you gotta consider when getting this vehicle, especially the performance numbers are impressive, especially with its efficiency and range, but you gotta think about weight in performance as well. And when you're looking at this Dodge Charger Daytona EV, it can be over 5,000 pounds. Now that is significantly heavier than the Charger Challenger of its previous year, even with all the bells and whistles and everything. It's concerning to have such a heavy vehicle that you want to throw around. And it's not that you can't throw it around. I mean, there are images and videos of people being able to throw around this EV quite a bit, but you're probably going to feel it in the handling. The longer wheelbase, the bigger platform that it sits on, and just its overall density is going to inevitably be felt in the handling, and that's something to consider. Third is the design and styling. There's basically two schools of thought. You can either go into the, it's so different that you're not willing to let go of its old heritage. Maybe the fact that it doesn't have the Dodge logo, the fact that it is an EV, the fact that it doesn't have as much cargo space as you'd think, despite it being an EV, the fact that you're not going to hear authentic V8 sound. That's a big one for car enthusiasts. They want to hear the cylinders firing. They want to hear that Hemi engine. And that kind of transitions into the other school of thought, which is basically like, it's so different, it's so cyberpunk, it's so unique that maybe that's a pro in your book of it's the start of a future of a vehicle that has been loved for so long and has introduced something exciting and new. It does have ambient lighting, it does have cyberpunk features, it does have the silhouette of a classic muscle car. It just has a new personality, a new efficiency, and different levels of excitement. It is hard for people to accept that the spirit of these bare bones, bulletproof 1970s golden era muscle cars are now being turned into cars that are in line with Tesla. And maybe they don't bite and bark the same exact way. The ranges, the technologies, the styling is all going to be different, but the essence of the computers doing so much work that it takes a little bit of the driver's excitement and skill away maybe is, I think, one of the reasons why car enthusiasts and purists have such a hard time with an EV as a muscle car. Again, one of the controversial points, and again, going back to the soul of the vehicle, the drama and excitement of enjoying a sport car like that is going to be the sound. That's one of the elements of your senses that you always remember when you're doing something exciting in a vehicle. And with the Dodge Charger EV, you know 100% of the time that that sound is fake. And that is something that a lot of people have a hard time getting over, have a hard time swallowing, that when they press on the accelerator, it has nothing to do necessarily with what they're doing to the engine or how the engine is responding, because there isn't even an engine. It's an electric motor that sends information to a computer, that sends information to speakers to tell your speakers how loud they need to get. Within the process of you driving is the issue that people have with the EVs. The fact that you can hear your tires a little bit more, the fact that you know that the exhaust sound is not only fake on the exterior, but also is piped into the interior as well. is a very maybe artificial experience that people are still not comfortable with yet. Another controversial point is they got rid of the Challenger. The Challenger was successful for decades. It was a very successful car, a very cool looking car. One of the most confusing points of getting rid of the Challenger to make way for the new Charger and only have the Charger and completely get rid of the Challenger is the fact that the most recent Challenger looks more like the new Charger than the most recent Charger does. If you were to put these cars side by side, the most recent Charger, Challenger, and the new Charger, the 2025 Charger EV, it is very obviously significantly more similar to the Challenger. So it is kind of strange for them to not only get rid of the Challenger, but to keep the Charger name while making it look like a Challenger. It's confusing to the audience of the demographic that they're trying to appeal to. This most recent version of the Challenger and the Challenger being 15 years in production, the Charger I believe being 13 years in production, it was getting pretty stale, and they had some minor changes in the way that it looked and the way that it felt and the way that it performed. And obviously performance features and performance specs had gone insane, especially once you got to the Hellcat, the Red Eye. All of those highly spec'd out trim levels offered a crazy amount of fun at a pretty reasonable price, especially when you're looking at the new Dodge Charger. Dodge, they've seen the controversial back and forth opinions on what people think about the EV, what they think about the interior, exterior, the sound is a big thing, but they're taking a risk and they're doing something different, and they're coming out swinging with their new options for their new Dodge Charger EV. They even have the turbocharged 6-cylinder that they know that people want and that they know people are not willing to part with their internal combustion engines quite yet, and so they're giving an outlet to those people and paying respect to that type of customer. I do love that Dodge is staying true to the fact that they know that their heritage is still a muscle car. This is a vehicle for a younger generation that's looking at a new horizon on the way that people drive, the way people enjoy cars, and the way that cars function. But there is room for improvement and for a new age of cars to where you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have a car that is exciting and sporty and sounds interesting and has an insane interior, and also have something that is efficient and gives you range and has screens and the best speakers you've ever heard. It's important to leave room for innovation, and Dodge is doing that. Thank you guys for watching. This was a really fun video to make because I know that people have loved the Dodge Charger and loved the Dodge Challenger for so long. I've always thought that it was such a cool vehicle, and it deserves all the love and praise and attention it's getting. Even though it's controversial, you gotta understand, if it's making this big of a wave, then that means it matters to people. And if it matters to people, they're doing something right, period. All right, I appreciate you guys. Thanks.